In this video, we're going to be talking about the rule of thirds. Basically, it's when you can imagine the frame looking like this, divided into 9 squares. 3 lines horizontal, 3 lines vertical. The biggest rule is that you want the person's eyes to intersect, or at least be just above, this top horizontal line. In fact, it's worth knowing that in cultures that read from left to right, that this top right part of the frame is the most important to them because that's where someone's eye naturally goes to start reading. So to them subconsciously, it's sort of where everything in the world starts. It's also why a lot of times you see floating boxes on the right side of anchors on the news. Again, people read from left to right. That means that the first thing the viewer naturally sees is the anchor. Then, as their eyes move right, they then read the text in the box. Keeping someone's eyes on that top horizontal line will also help you control the amount of headroom that somebody has. You want a tiny bit of space at the most. Anything nearing 1 square of space is far, far too much. Anything beyond that, and it's like when you're on vacation and you ask strangers to take a picture of you, you're lucky if you yourself are even in the shot. You can also compose some of your B-roll this way. Also too, while we're on the topic of interviews, know that as you do your interviews throughout the day, that you should alternate between putting people on both the left-hand side and the right side of the frame. And you'll definitely need a tripod to do this. And as I'll explain again here in a few moments, it's all because most video cameras, their LCD pops out on the left side of the camera. And therefore, you as the user will always be on that side. In fact, 100% of the time, you will be on that side if you are holding the camera handheld. Because that's the only side the viewfinder's on. You can't move the viewfinder to the other side. So, to put somebody on the left side looking right, you have to lock down your camera on a tripod. It's really easy as a one-person band to always put someone to put all your interviews on the right side with them looking towards the left, because that's the side of the camera that the viewfinders are typically on. And obviously that's very helpful to a one-person band because they can see what their shot looks like. If the person moves, they can adjust it. If they go on the other side, it's not. To reverse that, you have to sit on the right side of the camera, which always makes me a little uncomfortable because if the interview moves during the actual interview, I may not always see it. Now, a lot of times I'm kind of teetering over this way just for a couple of seconds as the person's talking to me and then coming back. But depending upon your environment, you may not have the physical room to actually move over and see your LCD. So again, being on the right side of the camera, it can sometimes be a little bit of a gamble. If somebody moves during the interview, I may not know it because I can't see the LCD screen, so I don't know if they're still in the shot. Even with this, it's still worth investing some effort into getting interviews on both sides of the camera. Now, as you're doing this, let's talk about conflict in a story, because one of the important things to point out when we're talking about putting people on opposite sides of the camera is that this subconsciously signals to the viewer that we're hearing from someone new and that they're different than the person that we just saw in the piece. Because to the viewer, we've visually changed things up because they themselves are on a different side of the camera. For most stories, this is good. Where you want to be aware of it and careful of it is when you're covering controversial stories, where it helps to film people on opposite sides of the camera because there's some natural conflict and it will help your viewer differentiate between the people talking as well as their side of the issue. The easiest example by far of this is politics, where you would put a person who believes one thing on this side of the camera and put the person with the opposite view on the opposite side of the camera. Again, it's a quick way for the viewer to keep track of who's talking. And I know this may seem strange, and here's something stranger. you have to produce videos assuming that the person watching is doing something else while watching. In fact, they're not even watching at all, they're probably only listening. In my opinion, being second screened is a step up from either one of those. And whoever thought we'd be saying that? It's all a reminder that when the viewer does look at the video again, it's up to us to help them understand what's going on. And by having people on opposite sides of the camera so that the viewer can visually differentiate between them is one tool that we can use to do that. And that's the rule of thirds. It's one of those rules that after a little practice will become second nature to you. Plus, when you're asked to take someone's photo when you're on vacation, you'll surprise them by taking a good one. I'll see you in the next video.